Hey there guys, I am the Six Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. So boy, there was a new Balance Dataslate today and this one is a bit of a doozy. There is a huge swathe of changes in this datasheet and I've linked it down below so that you can go and take a look yourself, but it will also obviously be on the screen as well. But boy oh boy, there are some pretty significant changes coming to a lot of armies that we need to take a look at. First up, we have some rules which will affect probably most players in the game because they are rules for either some of the biggest factions or just game-wide rules, and the first one is the rule for power armor, which has changed, or power armor wearing armies I should say. So this affects all Adeptus Astartes, all Sanctic and Heretic Astartes, as well as Adeptus Sororitas, and when an attack is allocated to them, the AP is reduced by 1. And this is for all the units, not just the infantry. This appears to be for vehicles and everything like that as well. So this is pretty much an army-wide buffs for all Marine or Sisters armies. Notably, it doesn't stack with things like Storm Shields or Combat Shields or the various other abilities and other rules that the armies may have that reduce AP values. But this is a pretty significant buff to the durability of 3-up save models, and will really help you to keep your infantry and your vehicles alive against all of the armor pen that is in the game at the moment. And then on the back of that, 2 abilities which are currently in the game which already do reduce incoming AP have also been changed, and the Stoic Endurance trait for the Order of the Valorous Heart Sisters, as well as the Forged in Battle trait for the Salamanders, have now both been changed to reflect this update, and now instead of reducing incoming AP by 1, they now mean that your opponent cannot reroll wounds against them. So all in all, some really tasty buffs for Marines and power armor armies all around, but even more if you are a Salamanders or a Valorous Heart player. Indirect fire also took a really significant hit, meaning that if you are using one such as an Impaler Cannon or a Whirlwind and you are targeting a unit that isn't visible, then you have to not only reduce the ballistic skill of your attacks by 1, but on top of that, the enemy gets an extra +1 to any armor saves they make, so it's going to make it much harder not only for you to hit, but also for them to fail those saves. And against all of those line of sight shooting attacks that are in the game at the moment, I think this is a really good change, and it really does level the playing field against a lot of the armies like the old Orcs and Tyranids, I suppose, although the Impaler Cannon did get nerfed, but I'm guessing this change came about because of their oppressiveness before the latest codex. Notably, the Astra Militarum don't suffer from this penalty, which is good because, to be honest, the Astra Militarum need all the help they can get at the moment. I will also say, on a quick aside, as an Orc player, I personally feel that with this nerf, as well as the price increase that we got on buggies not that long ago, the restriction on buggy spam could probably be lessened or outright removed. I really don't think it's needed anymore. I don't think people are going to be running buggy spam even if you did take it away, and even if they were, I don't think it would be all that oppressive with the changes that have happened to that kind of list over the last few months. The final big game-wide change is a change to the Bodyguard rule, which, as you can see, has had a wording update so that instead of being untargetable, it just means that a character can still use the Lookout Sir rule even if the Bodyguard unit is 3 or fewer models. And this just helps to stop the cheesy put a character out front and then a Bodyguard unit behind them out of line of sight and he is still totally untargetable interaction that people were using. Now, as the character will still be the closest model, he should still be a valid target. To be honest, it's a long overdue and very welcome change to an interaction that should have never really made it into the main codexes anyway. So this is a great little update in my books. It's a very simple change, but one that should hopefully curb a lot of those cheesy interactions that people were taking advantage of. So I think overall the 3 changes that we've covered here, the change to power armor armies, the indirect fire and the Bodyguard, they are some pretty drastic changes for the game overall, and whilst I don't think that they will fix the game, not by a long shot, I do think that they will help overall to balance out the curve of the overpowered armies compared to the ones that are underperforming at the moment. But then on top of that, there are also some army specific changes which have come in this dataslate, so let's take a look at those. For the forces of the Custodes, some huge nerfs have hit them. The objective secured rule is now only on troops, not all infantry models, so you can't anymore have Alarus Terminators with OBSEC, it is just your regular troop choices, which is in line with other 9th edition codexes. On top of that, some of the key stratagems in Esteemed Amalgam, Emperor's Auspice, and Martial Discretion have been changed to one use only, so this really does hit the Emperor's Chosen, as well as the ability to turn off enemy rerolls against your units. And then further to that, the Emperor's Auspice and the Arcane Genetic Alchemy aka Transhuman stratagem now only affect infantry units, so you can no longer give Transhuman or turn off rerolls against attacks targeting your bikers. So this is a pretty significant set of nerfs and will hit the Custodes and some of their favourite units really quite hard, I think, and especially armies that are using the Emperor's Chosen traits, which is very popular at the moment, are going to feel this quite significantly, I think. They are still going to be a very strong codex, and I think I would still put them in the A tier even after these changes, but I do think that it's going to be better because it's just going to make it a bit easier for your opponent to get those wounds through and not feel like everything they're trying is being shut down by Transhuman or turn off rerolls or all that kind of stuff every single time they try and kill some of your golden boys. The Harlequins, equally, with their 80% odd win rate, have taken a well-deserved hit, with the Star Weaver and the Void Weaver both getting a hefty points increase, going from 80 points up to 95 for the Star Weaver, and from 90 to a massive 130 points for the Void Reaver, which does massively hit two of the most seen units in Harlequin lists at the moment, and it immediately adds a good 360 points to the 9 Void Reaver lists that were winning all the tournaments recently, so this is going to massively dent their effectiveness and what else you can bring to your games. On top of that, the million hit Death Jester build has been nerfed with favour of Siogorach. I don't know how you pronounce that. Siogorach, only letting you change melee hit or wound or a saving throw to a 6, so you can no longer do auto 6s to hit with his ranged gun, and that's important because his ranged gun generated 3 extra hits, so you can't just automatically get 4 hits by turning one of those hit rolls into a 6 now. It is a relatively small change in terms of what it actually does, but it is a very significant one, and I don't think that we will be seeing this trait on Death Jesters anymore. And then finally, in a roundabout nerf to the Light Sadath, the Mirror Architect pivotal role, rather than being an aura like it is now an ability where you have to select a unit within 9 inches in your command phase. So you can still make one unit incredibly hard to hit by an enemy that's far away, but this won't allow your entire army to basically count as being an extra 6 inches away from the enemy anymore, which would obviously then proc the Light Sadath can't be hit on anything worse than a 4+. So it is a nice way to nerf that particular interaction without fully gutting the Light Sadath overall, I think, which I'm glad to see. I still think the Light Sadath is going to be a very powerful, maybe not quite go-to, but almost go-to selection in most games. It is just going to make it a little bit more of a decision to make as to whether you go for light or dark or twilight now. On top of those big changes, there are also some significant differences to things like the Astra Militarum, who now gain the Hammer of the Emperor rule, which, if your entire army is from the same regiment, gives you auto wounds on unmodified ranged hit rolls of 6. Did I read that? Yeah, I read that right. Yeah, the lasgun meta is well and truly going to be back. It's worth noting this doesn't just specify las weaponry, this is all of your ranged weaponry if your regiment is all the same. So all of your autocannons, your grenade launchers, your mortars, anything fired by a regiment model, auto wounds on hit rolls of 6. So start spamming all of that weaponry because your lasguns can now wound a knight automatically on a hit roll of a 6. Oh, and if it helps at all, whilst the infantry squad did get a slight bump up in points, going to 60 instead of 55, they countered that by making every wargear option 0 points. Yep, all of the unit's wargear is reduced to 0 points. So a current squad with a Voxcaster, a plasma gun, a las cannon, and a sergeant with a plasma pistol and a power sword, which would cost you 90 points at the moment, has dropped a massive 30 points down to just 60. Now, admittedly, Astra Militarum were doing really badly in the game at the moment, so this change, even as powerful as it seems, may not be enough to save them still. I don't know, but potentially 30 point cheaper infantry squads and auto wounding weapons at range is going to really help them a lot, I think, even if it doesn't completely fix them compared to some of the stronger factions of 9th edition. Elsewhere, we see some hits to T'au, with broadsides losing the core keyword and Montcar changing so that it just allows you to reroll wound rolls of 1. You no longer get that extra pip of AP when you target the closest enemy unit. And then also Death Guard getting some, not enough by any stretch, but some love, with the Blight Lord and the Death Shroud Terminators getting OBSEC to help them be not quite so rubbish, I guess. They're still not great by any stretch, but this is a tiny bit of a band-aid, I suppose. I think overall this data slate seems to be trying to rein in a lot of the AP escalation that we've seen in recent codexes and helping to make armor saves somewhat relevant again. Whether it's done that enough, I guess we will have to wait and see, but it certainly looks like things like the Custodes and the Harlequins, and to an extent the T'au, have been reined in somewhat, and struggling factions like the Sisters, Marines of all varieties, and the Guard have been given some pretty significant buffs. And alongside the changes which, to be honest, should have been in the game from the get-go to things like Indirect Fire and the Bodyguard rule, it certainly is a step in the right direction. It definitely is a step in the right direction. I do have to give GW credit for that. The issue for me is that these data slates are, because of how the game is and how it keeps kind of going, getting so big and expansive. They are almost becoming an entirely separate book that you need to carry around alongside your codexes, your FAQs, your erratas, your supplements, your campaign books, and everything else. And I really do think that, as useful as these balancing tools are, there needs to be a concerted effort from GW to just make the game more balanced at a base level in the rulebook and in the codexes, so that we aren't lumbered with 3 pages of new changes and entirely new rules for struggling factions every 3 months. Because sooner or later, it's just going to get to the point where it's completely unmanageable, and you're going to buy a codex, and then 6 months or 9 months down the line, none of the rules are in it are going to be relevant because everything will have been changed by a balanced data slate. And I just think, I think personally 10th needs to be a complete hard reset like 8th was, but I do think there needs to be a very strong effort by GW to stop things getting out of hand in this way in the next edition and in future editions as well. But what do you make of this balanced data slate? It's the biggest one that we've seen so far, but does it do enough to rein in the Custodes and the Harlequins? And do you think the changes that they've made will be enough to boost the Marines to get them back onto the top tables? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.